On this episode of AV Week, we look at a report that says IoT devices will reach $1 trillion by 2020. Also look at how to expand and support your products outside of your home country. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 329, recorded Friday, December 15th, 2017. Facetime.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Vadio, a leading manufacturer of professional PTZ cameras, Pro AV solutions, and UCC integration systems. And by Crestron.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening to this fine show. We appreciate it. To join us this week and discuss the news of the week, we have an incredible cast, actually. A great roundtable today. First and foremost, his name is Ron Camden. He's from Biamp, and that's the only introduction this young man needs. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. Glad to be a part of the podcast. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Also with us, Mr. Chris Bach from over at Extron. How are you, sir? See, and you've already screwed it up. I can't hear you.
There we go. How's that? If I unmute, does it work better? You know, this microphone is really weird because it flashes when it's muted and it's solid red when it's unmuted. That's kind of the opposite of...
Wow. So let's try this again. There's a reason we edit. Also with us is Chris Bach from Extron. How are you, sir?
Wonderful, Tim. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. Mr. Patrick May from over at Milestone by Legrand.
That's correct. Soon to be Legrand AV Technologies. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And last but not least, a new guy, so you guys be nice to him. His name is Steven. He is from Barco. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you, and thanks for having me on. Happy holidays, everybody out there.
Yeah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, actually Hanukkah's going on as we record this. So, all right, guys, a couple things real quick before we move along. Kind of a programming note. First of all, this is our last recording of AVNation or AV Week rather for the year. And when I say that, I mean this is the last time we're going to take the news stories that have happened this week and produce it out on Monday. A week from Monday is actually Christmas Day here in the, not just the States, but around the world. So we technically will be taking that off. There will be a program that is released. We do a best of for 2017. The programs that we think are the best and actually the most popular ones. Condense those down and give those up to you. We also do a year in review and year in preview show. That stuff will be coming around Christmas and New Year's. So this is our last one. So this is going to be kind of cool to take a look at what's happened this week. First and foremost, from our buddies over at Commercial Integrator. And this is, God love IoT stories. I'll just put it that way. According to our friends over at Commercial Integrator, IoT spending is going to reach $1 trillion in 2020. Now, if you are familiar with the term IoT and you're familiar with a couple of white papers that have been written over the last few years, one is by Cisco that said that there will be something in the neighborhood of 9 billion IoT devices or 9 billion connected devices, actually by this year, which didn't happen, just for the record. You will understand that I take studies like this with a little bit of a grain of salt because they tend to overestimate not only spending but also the number of devices. However, one thing that they have looked at is the fact that the total spending at the end of 2017, which they actually have numbers for, is going to hit $674 billion. So this one may actually get closer to the IoT estimate from 2011. Chris, I want to start with you on this because all four of you guys are manufacturers, and I kind of did that by accident. I totally didn't mean to, but it worked out because of this, right? All four of you guys have incredible, or your devices have over the last few years have incredibly connected to the network, right? Absolutely. and whether it's a voice controlled device, or it is a thermostat, or it's a sensor, what have you. You guys all have to deal with interacting with this stuff, or at least making sure that this stuff isn't compromised. So we're going to talk a little bit about security, and also talk about working within the IoT world and how that interacts with AV. So Chris, when it comes to not just this forecast, but also when you guys look at putting things on the network, how are you helping integrators realize that, okay, there are going to be some consumer-ish, in the world of broadcast, we used to call it prosumer, when there was a camera that was not quite to the broadcast level, but not quite, consumer level, devices that are hitting the AV world?
Well, there's a number of different answers to that question. There's different answers in different applications. One is just as a manufacturer making the equipment themselves, we are interested in IoT. Like, for example, right now, as we manufacture things, we use RFID to track components during the process. Works in progress are all known so that you can have enough of each part at the right station at the right time to make the stuff that we sell. Once it's out there, then we have portfolios such as Global Viewer Enterprise to manage all these different things. The article talks a lot about services being a big thing, and Global Viewer Enterprise for many resellers is an added value that they offer as a service. So you can check on things like projectors and so on and so forth. Switchers are on the right input, and sources are active in putting out video, and you can schedule service proactively. But Global Viewer 2.7 that just came out can manage pretty much anything that's IP. So as we put more and more and more things on the network, we have more and more of a bigger picture of the state of health of every room that's under there, whether it's a small set of rooms in a small building or a big campus that goes on there. And then when you dive a little deeper into the room, then we've got room scheduling that we've been developing add-ons for this year. We now have support for occupancy sensors right directly to the panel. That's part of that. And that occupancy sensor might go to a control processor, which then wakes up the room and turns on things in a sequence of events with macros the way that you want. So as more of these things come out for things like partition sensors and occupancy sensors, and like you said, thermostats and stuff, we'll be able to combine them, because that's the big thing. When Apple came up with HomeKit, that was the big excitement, that you wouldn't have to have 17 apps on your phone at the same time doing different things and having books fall over behind you. Gravitational
If you're watching the video,
You didn't have an
Chris,
earthquake, did you, Chris?
Not to my knowledge, although apparently we have a bunch all the time. But what I was saying,
It was just the power of what you were saying.
yeah, the sheer volume of my amazingness couldn't be contained.
Yeah, if you're watching the video, Chris's Python book just fell over. So I'm not sure if that has something to do with Python or the words he was saying. So.
Yeah, did I forget to mention you in that?
Yes, you did.
I apologize.
So, Ron, I want to bring you in on this, because here's the thing. I don't talk about this a lot, but Ron Camden has helped me an awful lot in my development in general. Ron and I have been talking about IT and AV for a lot of years, for at least about a year or so, 2 years probably. This is something that not just BIAMP, but we were talking about that as well. I mean, you guys have been on the network for a long time. You were early adopters to the first audio over IT, and now you guys have developed, and got on board with Avenue Alliance, and now you have video, over the network as well. Mm-hmm. How do you not only educate the integrators, but also when you're talking to IT managers, communicate to them the importance of all of these devices being on the network and making sure that everything's secure and locked down?
Well, you're right, Tim. We have been involved. We've been putting in RJ45 on the back of our products since 2001. We've used various technologies to be able to communicate digital audio. I guess, how do we educate? Well, it's through marketing. We've hired a field sales engineer to specifically help integrators on key networking issues. Jordy's been with IBM for 14 years. And so he's there, readily accessible to integrators to help them through managing, putting more products on the network, as well as understanding the amount of bandwidth, especially with video, that's going to impact. So we understand the challenge, and we're trying to be very proactive in making sure that a product isn't put on the network and there isn't the capability to support it, and causing the end user challenges of upgrading their bandwidth without knowing that they were having to do that up front.
No. Stephen, I want to bring you on this because this one of the things that Stephen does is he's involved with Barco's Overture, which is a control system, which is, I'm not going to call it an IoT control system because it's not quite right, but you guys are software or server-based control on that. When you are talking with consultants or people putting in your product, and you're looking at occupancy sensors and other IoT-like devices, how are you helping them just design these systems to where the deployment of them is a success?
So with respect to that, we're actually starting with what the user experience should be, and we're working from there. So we're definitely talking about giving IT guidance and security guidance, making sure that people understand what ports have to be open on the firewall, what ports don't have to be open on the firewall, if they want that type of access where they can manage and control from anywhere without the hassle of having to use VPNs and things like that. Actually manage from the cloud. And I think more and more customers are starting with that expectation that they should be able to manage their content from anywhere, that it should be cloud-based. When they put together a list of requirements for the project, it starts with, is it cloud-based? Can I manage it from anywhere? But then we're actually, the further guidance we're going to is, what's the really desired experience to be in that room? What will people be doing in that room? And so, kind of really simplifying things so that the technology responds to the human in the way that humans work, rather than humans having to learn new workflows and become intimidated by the technology. And just kind of piggybacking on what Ron was saying about IT, we're actually finding that IT is kind of a step ahead of us when it comes to these devices. They already have an expectation of, things should be connected. I should be able to remotely monitor and manage them. It's AV that seems sort of more new to that concept, but IT is very familiar with it and ready to embrace it. So they're looking for those types of things and wanting to add them to part of their arsenal so that they know exactly what's happening everywhere on their network, whether it's an AV device or a network device.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Tim, if I can jump in, that's exactly, Stephen is spot on. They're looking for system administrative software. They want to know, they want to be able to monitor, in our particular case, amplifiers to make sure that the entire system is working. They want to be able to do that from one central place so that they can troubleshoot a room remotely.
Immediately.
They want all the information coming back to them rather than having to go out and reach for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Patrick, here's the thing. We at InfoComm this year, AVNation was blessed with a Vadio AV bridge matrix. I actually have one here in the studio here that we'll start using to connect everybody. Nice. That is an IT device, right? Yep. That transferring the audio and the video and a couple other stuff. You can do lower thirds and stuff. When you guys start talking to folks about putting things on the network, what are you getting pushback from when it comes to the IT managers?
It's interesting because the IT managers don't want to give up their bandwidth or traffic to manage devices and just to get the metrics off of this. The IT people maybe don't see the same value in reporting that the HR and marketing and other departments kind of do. So what we try and do is we try and get them to segregate off into a separate VLAN so that they can separately manage things, write it on a little bit of different part of the network, have different security profiles for everything, and just let all of those devices be managed under their own conditions so that you're not disrupting everything else that's running on your network. There have been some challenges there. You do have to make some additional investment, but what you get back on the return of your investment is you have a greater understanding of your network. You have a greater understanding of how these things are used. So after a few months, we're finding people after the deployment, they really no longer have any issues with this because they are getting the value of the metrics that they maybe didn't quite understand before the implementation.
Very good. All right, guys, moving on here to our friends over at AV Magazine. Lawwell is expanding their U.S. teams and they're opening up a new support and logistics hub. Lawwell is a German manufacturer. They make IP, audio, and video and control infrastructure devices. What I wanted to talk to you guys about, and Ron and Stephen, actually, we'll start with you guys. This is a German company coming into the U.S., right? So they've never been in the U.S. before. All four of your companies have operations elsewhere, outside of your home bases, right? Let's say, because Barco is a Belgian company. Extron is in Anaheim. Biamp is just north of there in Beaverton, Oregon. And Port Patrick probably has 20 feet of snow in Minnesota. So, Ron, I'll start with you on this. As you guys have expanded over the last 30 or 40 years, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered when you've gone outside of your host country?
Well, gosh, there's a ton. First of all, we've been working with distributors mostly, except for we had direct communications or involvement with integrators in the Middle East and India, but in the rest of the world, we go at it through distribution. The challenge there is it's helpful because you have product readily available to customers, and we work very closely with our distributors in getting the product information in the native language of that particular country. Economics situations occur. All of a sudden your product is extremely more expensive in a country like Brazil because of economic challenges that are going on, and tariffs and duties and such. So it's a constant thing that you're working through, and you're treating your distributors as if they're just an extension of your sales team. And what is a challenge is these are separate businesses, right? I mean, some of the other manufacturers work directly. They have their own warehouses internationally. Biamp doesn't have that today. And so you don't have that challenge of a distributor can choose to go in a different direction than what you're going towards in the marketplace, and then you have to have a disconnect and look for another distributor and move forward. So it's and of course you're one removed from the integrator, which is challenging in itself. So there's lots of different things involved in doing business internationally. We've done it very well, but just when you think you have it all worked out and it's going to flow, some president gets removed from office, and the whole economic situation in that country goes south, and before you know it, you've got to find a new distributor, or you've got to find a different way to market. So you have to keep your finger on the pulse of geopolitical stuff too. Yeah, absolutely. We've found that by being involved in the various Infocom. I almost said Avixa, but they're still called Infocom shows.
Yeah.
That having a booth there, being able to reach out and have that one-on-one communication is extremely important in developing your brand within the various markets. ISE for it has been huge. I mean, the growth of ISE has been phenomenal, and the primary contributor to that has been the end user coming to ISE, and that's just a touch that's very hard to get to any other way. So lots of challenges, but that's what business is all about, right? So
yeah,
That's the way to call it work.
Yeah. Patrick, I know you guys have developed over the last couple of years, at least a small team in the Netherlands when it comes to support and sales engineering and stuff like that. When you did that, how was that received in at least the European market, which is their closest geographically?
So it's been interesting. We do have the facility in Weert, and we acquired the Projecta brand kind of along with that, which is Europe. And what that did is it gave us a local sales force and a local engineering team that not only understands the product, but they understand the differences and nuances between the cultures, because the sales motion in Germany is going to be different from France and Belgium, and there's going to be slight differences based on the cultural conditions, the previously mentioned tariffs, the pricing and everything that kind of goes along with that. The distributorships, you may have different distributorships for the UK than you do for the continent and things along those lines. So when we acquired that company that had that local reach, it gave us a really strong and well-defined understanding of those cultures, and it gave us the ability to kind of tap into that expertise to proliferate our products throughout the market a little bit possibly easier than it would have been to do if we just went and expanded overseas. And that's part of what we were talking about in the article that you sent out, is expanding into different markets. And acquisitions is a great way to do that because you get talent that comes along with it. So it has actually been quite a good thing for Milestone as a result of that. And now, with Legrand being a very global company with a lot more outreach, I can't say that that's going to slow down, right? So
and not for nothing, but they're not based in the U.S. either. I mean, that they do have a number of companies that are, right. You've got Middle Atlantic, you've got Milestone in general, which Vadio and Daylight and Chief. But Legrand is based in France, right?
Right.
So they are one of the unique kind of multinational companies, as far as they are based in one country, and they own companies throughout.
Right. And they have a huge manufacturing base, throughout building controls and supplies, electronic components and things along those lines that can really give us a great way to tap into. You talk about the additional networking sources needed earlier. We have the Cables to Go brand now, the actual Legrand brand with networking, with the OnCue boxes that are built into homes, with the power outlets and all those things, the USB connectivity. As we work, on integrating all of these companies, I'm sure we'll build out a strong suite of components to support IoT, but it also helps to get the Chief brand stronger in other markets, and it helps to give us a better outreach there. So kind of, works well on both of those fronts, I think.
Yeah. Stephen, I want to bring you in because you're kind of the opposite side of this, Barco being a Belgian company coming into the U.S. When you're dealing with folks here, and you're talking about, Barco US is still Barco US. So when you're, transversing and I guess translating, between Belgium and here, you run into any problems with anybody, or is it just Barco is Barco and no big deal?
No, I wouldn't say problems, but you definitely have to have a cultural awareness.
Okay.
So, even in the United States, taking a New Yorker and transplanting them in Texas, so those things you still have to navigate, and those things exist, culturally as well. Just understanding what those cultural differences are, and even Ron touched on how distributors help us navigate that as well. So when you go into other countries, Distributors can help you navigate those cultural differences, but they can also help you tell your story in a better way. What I found over the last year, focusing on one product for Barco as more or less a product evangelist, is that there are stories or parts of the solution that really resonate in the US that in, say, for example, Australia, there's another part of that solution where they think this is the key thing, this is the key concept, and really relying on those distributors to give us that feedback and help us kind of make sure that we're strengthening our story across the board and positioning our products in the right way. So it becomes a major part of kind of having that multicultural approach.
Chris, I'm going to bring you on this too, not for nothing, but just like most of you folks, Extron has a headquarters in Europe. It's actually in Amersfoort, in Netherlands, and in that office, they have, good Lord, off the top of my head, I remember seeing 4 or 5 different little cubicles, and that person, back to Ron's point about having the different languages and the different local people, you guys have got folks who not only are native speakers, but also native speakers who are also sales engineers who can speak,
Sure.
Translate that into whatever language that they're talking about. But Stephen also brought up a good point about being regional here in the States.
Yep.
Right. I mean, Chris does a good portion of the West Coast. When you were going from, I don't know, San Francisco to Phoenix, Arizona, talking with the differences in talking with different people here in the States. How do you how do you go about doing that landscape?
I don't know. You just got to feel people out and find out what their interests are. That's where there's no replacement for FaceTime, spending time with people. You get so far on the phone, and then you get to the next level when you're actually face to face with someone. I only today do California. It's a small state,
okay.
It's only 750 miles tall, but I did do Arizona and Nevada for a while, and the Bay Area is always popping. So I spent 21 weeks there this year, and it's looking like 23 next year. But yeah, it never stops over there. But there's very different atmospheres even within California. You go up into San Francisco, and that's different than LA, and that's different than San Diego, and that's different than even further north when you get into Chico and Santa Rosa and Humboldt and so on and so forth. So you just learn people's stories and their struggles. You ask them questions like, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What do you like about what we make, and what would you change? And fortunately, they take that very seriously here, and they have a good system where you can write that down and you can look at it before you go back the next time, so you remember what to focus on. And you just hope that you've been there frequently enough that it's not a chasm to cover a mile of ground each time you're there, because we make stuff all the time.
Do you think you get good and honest feedback when you ask those questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I try and, kind of like you, run your show in a way where you're listening more than you're talking. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you just hope that your pen can keep up with what they're telling you. You get better at chicken scratch and deciphering it at the hotel when you get back. Hopefully you remember what you were thinking. And we make so many different things that you never know what you're going to hear. Like when we were doing trade shows, and the day when AV Track was brand new, it was in the corner of the booth, and we had new exciting big matrix switchers and stuff. And then there was this AV Track that everyone lost their mind over. Well, wow, you never know what the market's going to love. And then you focus on that and you take the feedback. Well, I like this, I don't like that. And then you adapt.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
Tim,
Yes,
another thing that I think that probably all 4 of us are very, very involved with is the support of our products. And in our particular case, yes, we have that first line of support with our distributors as we expand, but it's what a lot of people need is that direct relationship with the manufacturer. So we have 25 people that are scattered around the world, so that if you're in a particular country, you need to speak to somebody that can support our product in Chinese, we can make that happen, or in German, or whatever you wherever you want to go, because that's that's so important that the manufacturer supply that global support as they expand, because otherwise you're tied to the 8 to 5 that your distributor works.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Chris Bach, how do people find you and or Extron Electronics?
They find me on the website because we're still making out-of-the-box videos. We just made another one yesterday, so hopefully there'll be a product blast on that in the not distant future. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well, but for the most part, they'll find me through the Extron site.
All right, very good. Mr. Camden, sir, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You can find me at byamp.com, and we'll be in Amsterdam at booth number 3B120. We've been there for a couple of years, so please, if you're going to be in Amsterdam, come by and have a cup of coffee with us.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not actually, ByAmp's booth is right where Hall 2 and Hall 3 kind of come together. So I actually made a mistake the other day and told somebody that you guys' booth was in Hall 2. It's not. It's Hall 3. So, all right, Mr. May, sir, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. You can reach me at patrick.may@milestone.com. Our company's website is www.milestone.com. All of our brands will be represented at ISE, and then I will see you all at DSE coming up in March. So,
yes. Yeah, good old Vegas for a couple of days. So
that's right. Final Four.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure for me. Thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn, or my email is steven.lamfier@barco.com. Barco's Twitter is @Barco. And of course, we'll be at ISE as well. And that's booth 12F100.
Yeah, Hall 12, F100. All right. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me. As of this recording, I'm going to Star Wars in a couple hours, so don't bother me.
Out of pocket.
And then I'm going to be complaining about the Bears until the end of the season, and then go Blues. But go by the website, if you would please, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including an exclusive interview with Harman Pros, Mohit Parashar, that we did earlier this week. So we got to sit down with him for about a half an hour. He talks about all sorts of things, layoffs and Samsung purchasing them and all sorts of other stuff. So check that out if you would please. Also check out our underwriter page. These are the folks who help us and support us financially. They help us do this program. They help us go to ISE. And three of you gentlemen are that. So we appreciate it. Extron and Milestone, as well as ByAmp. We appreciate their support. Also check out our end of the year for AVWeek. We also have a number of other monthly shows that looks at programming. We'll look at social media and marketing, as well as live staging and events. So all of that and more at AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been AV Week.